Welcome to chapter 24. In this chapter, we are, among other things, going to be looking at the reflexive and reciprocal pronouns. Starting with the reflexive pronoun, which has the base form ske, and we can, as is often the forms for words with a meaning of self or own or whatnot, we can delimit different syntactic contexts in which this form is used. And we're going to start with the adverbial usage, which is emphatic usage. This is something that actually works in English too. Prescriptive grammarians will tell you that it is poor style in English. It is also the original usage of these forms in English. So as per usual, the knowledge base that prescriptivists are working off is somewhat limited. If you want to consider it as stylistically poor to use the original usage of a function. So, okay, if we have sentences like mi kum kechigit ske tolam, as an adverb, like use adverbially here, I'm going to come myself. There's, of course, nothing actually reflexive about this. It is just used for emphasis. It is possible, and it works in all persons here. In the third person, singular and plural, we can optionally attach possessive suffixes like skest or skeje to add additional emphasis to forms that were already emphatic here. You don't have to do it, but you can. You can't in the other persons, at least not when you're using it adverbially. The next function we have, the adjectival usage, own, that we have. Own is like not necessarily the functionally fitting translation that we have. Like, I mean, it is what it carries a basic meaning, but it does not. It's not how you would translate it. Ske, in the sense of own, in the sense of something belonging to the subject of the sentence. And in English, we would generally use possessive pronouns here that of the same form as the subject. Like if I say kocham ske passajem yarata, what I in English would say is my grandfather loves his work, but it is grandfather's own work that he loves. And Mari, by having ske always used when you when something is referring back to the subject of the clause, this allows Mari to make a distinction which we don't have in English. Like in English, if I say Peter loves his wife, usually you would mean Peter's own wife. But if I had some more context here, like Owen discovered that Peter loves his wife, it could mean now Owen's wife or so. So we have some ambiguity here between two situations that are very different, loving one's own wife and loving somebody else's wife. In Mari, you would not have this ambiguity because you would be using ske if it was Peter's own wife and puden if it was somebody else's wife. Okay, and then we have the pronominal usage where we have a whole paradigm here, where the forms are not always 100% predictable. And I know it's a pain, but you just have to learn all these forms. It's not much I can say and do to help you here. Yeah, even the forms that are not entirely predictable. And so they are forms that are marked in by, they generally come marked by both person and case. So you have like dative, first person singular or whatnot. And grammars might tell you that the marking, the possessive marking is obligatory in these cases, but especially in like impersonal clauses. So you do also find these forms that we have on the left here where there is no person marking on the pronoun. I think we have it in the slides too. So nominative would be especially used in combination with postpositions that govern the nominative. To think about yourself a bit. So again, about by its government usually wants the nominative. So it would be like pashan again, to think about work, think about yourself, again. Okay. And here again in the nominative, we can have possessive suffixes in the third person singular. and plural, but we don't have to. And note that in the singular here, while we had shkeje in the adverbial usage, now we have shkej, because there is generally always a postposition after the nominative forms, and before postpositions we oftentimes have this short form of the possessive pronoun that we have in shkej. Also, the genitive. Well, by the genitive we can distinguish two basic usages. We can have again with postpositions, where there are some it's quite idiosyncratic when we use the genitive on the pronoun and when we have a person marking on the postposition. And you can find both in many cases, like shkenan dek, genitive here on the pronoun, and then also marked by person, first plural, and then no marking on dek. Or we can have shke, nominative, no person marking, and then dek, not person marking on the postposition. This is a complicated topic that we will revisit at some point, but for now, just accept that there is some variation here on where the marking goes, if it goes on the pronoun or if it goes on the postposition. The genitive can also be used in situations similar to those where we had the adjective usage before. Skenden wäre sit down in your own place, where we could in theory also just say ske wäre sketchich. And here again, the factors determining the distribution between these two, they are not entirely transparent. My feeling is that the ske wäre sket version of this is more neutral and unmarked, and skenden wäre sket is like extra stressing your own seat, get a room of your own or something like that. Whereas ske might be more neutral, like if it is second person singular, it would be like take your seat. Like if we think back at what I was just talking about, the Peter loves his wife situation, that it is like just it can be, it's the neutral possessive form of something that is possessed by the grammatical subject of the sentence, which is second person singular here. Whereas these genitive forms are more like where you in English would actually use own, like get a room of your own or so. Okay. In the dative and accusative, it's way more straightforward when we use this reflexive pronoun, because that's just when things are reflexive. When one buys oneself a cake, when one loves oneself, when one praises oneself or whatnot. Depending on what the government of the verb is, if you want to have a dative object and you want to have it reflexive, you use the dative forms, and if you want to have an accusative object, you use the accusative forms. It's fairly straightforward. And yeah, here I mentioned that these forms, that some reference materials will tell you that they don't even exist, but you can find them where we have like shkem, kulesh semen, kuchen, moshtaman. One must behave oneself correctly as it is needed, kulesh semen. And it's an impersonal clause because moshtaman is impersonal. So if it's an impersonal clause and we have no person to mark, you can also just use shkem or shkalan in the dative. Okay, ikte vese, one another. And yeah, I mean, it is literally ikte, one, vese, other, one other. And this is reciprocal, like when we have two or more things that are carrying out an activity on each other or one another. Where here we can have the basic forms, ikte vese, so without the marking of a person. And we can also have possessive suffixes attached to ikte vese, and they precede the case ending the possessive suffixes. But in the dative, first person plural and second person plural, as per usual in the dative, there's a bit more variety here. Both arrangements go. So you can have here, you can also have the dative come first and then have the possessive suffix, like ikte, vese, na. But yeah, And the usage here is, here I would say it is fairly straightforward. The nominative and genitive forms you use with postposition, like ik de weste det from one another. It can also be used possessive. The genitive can also be used possessively. So if we say ik de weste stem pasha stem üstelet, they are doing each other's work. Not everybody's doing their own work, but we have like Anush is doing Echan's work and Echan is doing Anush's work. They've swapped their works. So yeah, that works. And then helping oneself, here we have it with the dative, and love, not oneself, help each other or love each other and the such, or greeting each other, depending on the government of the verb we either have in the dative or the accusative. Little note that we have here about derivational suffixes following plural suffix, that is possible. We have already met the locational suffix of that we have ola, the city. We can have olala especially in combination with local cases endings and postposition, like olalaste in the cities, olalakich from the cities. We can also attach derivational suffix se to the sitting to this and have olalase of the cities. So we have like the Maris of the Sverdlovsk and Perm oblasts. We have oblast lase. So yeah, here we have a derivational suffix following a plural suffix, which internationally is not a very common thing, but is actually very common in the Volga-Kama region. We have derivational suffixes following inflectional suffixes. You can find examples all over. In this chapter, we're having a bit of a look at how one can express fractions and decimal numbers in Mari. There are competing strategies here that are all well understood. One of them is that if we have like want to say 1/6 or 7/100, is that we do it exactly as in English, 1/6, that we use the ordinal numbers. Shim, shudumshe, 7/100. So the exact same forms that we use as ordinals, like the 100th person to come or so. There is also the strategy that of using kudetash, derived, like word forms derived of the basic numerals. So we have kudet, the long form numerals 6th, and kudetash is then an own form that just means the 6th part or so. Here, different Maris that we spoke with from different generations and from different year areas preferred one strategy or the other. So, I mean, since the position of Mari in education is comparatively weak, it is not that heavily standardized, and basically just accept both of these strategies. Always a good strategy in language learning is to accept a lot. We can also, if we want to make it explicit, we can also say ik kudumjo ujash, 1/6 part, as in English, that we can have ujash as a part, it means part, after the ordinal number to make it explicit that we're looking at a fraction. If we are talking about a whole number and a fraction, a good word to note is tichmash, which is like totality, but whole, and it can mean wholes in a mathematical sense, like 4 wholes and 7/8 that we have. And this tichmash whole should then have the additive particle attached to it. For half and quarter, there are special, I mean, as is the case in English, where we have half rather than second and quarter rather than fourth, unless we're in music. As in English, we have special words that you should know here. We have pele for the half and chirek for the fourth. Words and words usage. What have we got here? Well, we're looking at centuries and decades. How do we indicate centuries and decades in Mari? So for century, there is the word kurum, meaning century. And generally, Mari, as Russian does, will denote centuries with Roman numerals. So XXI, Roman 21, kurum. And if you have a Roman numeral, it is automatically to be read as an ordinal, without even having the usual she marking. It's just Roman numeral means it's ordinal. Yeah. If we're talking about intervals, like from the 10th to the 12th century, we again just use the ordinals, luumsho, lat kokumsho, but then we attach this plural suffix, the la, to the century, kuram laste, in the centuries. In decades, again, we will use the la forms. Like if we want to talk about the 20s, we will often talk about the kolamsho I la, so the 20th years. And la here, the plural suffix, this is important to show that this is like a decade rather than just the 20th year or something like that. And this is very codified that if you have the la with I, it's understood as a decade. And here, this is just putting together everything that we've got. The 70s of the 19th century, so the 1870s, this is how you would stick it all together, what you've seen before. So on chash, to look, to shine, and its momentary derivation on chalash can also be used. So on chash is like to see. On chalash would be like to look at something, to see something for a moment, for a short time. Both of these verbs can also be used for shining, for the sun. You can have keche on cha, the sun is literally looking, the sun is shining, or keche veselan on chale, the sun shone brightly, like here momentarily for a moment. In this chapter, we're now done with animals, and it's time for some trees. Here you have some of the most important trees. Maoris often will know way more trees than you will if you are coming from the West, but here are some of the most important ones. Another point we have in this chapter are cardinal directions, fitting because we are looking at the Eastern Maoris here. The basic nouns for the cardinal directions are formed by a very transparent strategy here. The north is the night side, the east is the morning side, the south is the noon side, and the west is the evening side. So you just, wherever the sun is at a time of day, that side it is. What is a bit more complicated is the, how do you say in the north, in the east, in the south, in the west? Because there are two competing strategies here. And that is, you can have the unproductive row with the, that we have looked at previously, where we would have like Judvelne in the north, Judveke into the north, Judvechen from the north. And we would have the productive strategy where we would have Judvelan, where the productive row where we would have like Judveleshke into the north, Judveleshte, the regular initiative form, Judvelgich with the postposition gich, which you can attach to anything. So these strategies, they are coexisting with one another. And if we look at the corpus, we can see that there is some deviation within between different forms. That's like for motion towards, Maoris prefer saying Judvelishke, so using the productive row. But if it is in the north, they prefer using the unproductive form Judvelne over Judvelishte. But it's by no means rare to say Judvelishte. So yeah, it's complicated, but here just to give you a basic overview of it. A little side note here, what do we do if we are between two cardinal directions? Don't worry, Maori does not do anything brutal with you as Baltic Finnic languages do. You don't have own words for the northwest, northeast, etc. Instead, we just juxtaposition the two compass directions. So if we have northeast is just like in English, northeast, Judvel, Erdvel. So the text in this chapter pertains to the Eastern Maoris. So the Maoris living in Bashkortostan and the Maori diaspora living outside of the Republic of Maori out further to their east, and to their pertains to their history and to their customs. Not that much information on the language here, because unlike the Hill Maoris, you don't really have strong linguistic separatism among the Eastern Maoris. There are some dialectal differences between Eastern Maoris and Meadow Maoris, but they're smaller. They can be understood just by the stronger Turkic influence, because the Eastern Maoris are living often in Turkic majority regions. And they are, most importantly, the speakers themselves don't feel a desire to be separated from Meadow Maori linguistically speaking. So you're unlikely to cause any political problems by calling Eastern Maori a dialect rather than a language. Yeah, And the video this week pertains to the kandera, the rope. This is a dance, the rope dance, in which the dancers are weaving a rope, which is extremely popular among the Eastern Mars. I can tell this from firsthand information. When I was in the Republic of Bashkortostan, I lost count of how many kanderas we danced after a few days. And the song of the week is the conventional tune that is usually played on an accordion when the kandera is danced, but that also does have an accompanying text. Actually, there are many versions, but one very popular version is going to be in the recording. With that being said, that's it for this week. See you next time.